Amidst a hectic shift, barista Nina and her coworker Polly hustle to keep up with orders. Nina's regular customer Curtis arrives and they slip into the back room for their usual post-shift routine. The baristas later gripe about their small tips and Nina brainstorms ways to increase their earnings. Polly jokingly suggests Nina should just buy the place. After closing, Nina gets a message about her twin Victoria's engagement. Days later, Nina reluctantly attends the engagement party at their wealthy parents' house. To her surprise, her parents reveal that Victoria didn't want her there, though Nina explains that it was Victoria's fiancé Ryan who invited her. Her parents then compare Nina to her more successful twin. As the party continues, Victoria makes a grand entrance. Nina later confides in her cousin Penelope about her decision to drop out of law school and her $150,000 debt. Penelope mentions the family's wealth, but Nina refuses handouts from them, especially Victoria. Penelope hints at tension between the twins and Nina admits they've grown apart. Penelope reveals that Victoria already chose her bridesmaids, leaving Nina disappointed. When Penelope jokes about confusing the twins, Nina proudly shows off her new infinity tattoo, something Victoria doesn't have. At a bar, Nina vents her frustrations, only to be caught off guard when the bartender comments on how she's dressed down. She brushes it off, but is later surprised when the bartender tells her tab has been covered by a man named John. Although she doesn't recognize him, she plays along to avoid paying. John gives her a diamond-studded bracelet, which Nina gratefully accepts. As they embrace, Victoria walks in and the twins lock eyes. Victoria gestures for Nina to follow her. In the bathroom, Nina realizes the bartender and John had mistaken her for Victoria. She accuses her sister of having an affair, but Victoria reveals she's been working as an escort, not a consultant as she told their parents. Victoria explains that she turned to escorting out of necessity, only working with ultra-wealthy clients. She adds that her fiancé doesn't know and insists she'll leave the business after saying goodbye to her regular clients like John. The next morning, Curtis vents about his lack of promotion and Nina encourages him to ask for one. That evening, Victoria visits Nina with an offer. One last booking from a VIP client offering $5,000 per hour. Victoria would keep the deposit while Nina keeps the hourly pay and tips. Nina asks if intimacy is involved and Victoria assures her it's strictly companionship, sweetening the offer with a $30,000 potential payout and the bracelet John gave her. Victoria lends Nina a dress and briefs her on the client, David Links, a reclusive CDO known for his charitable work and connections with billionaires. Victoria hands Nina a phone to use for communication. Nina arrives at the hotel and is greeted by one of David's bodyguards, who takes her to his suite. When she reaches for a backgammon set, David enters, warning her not to touch it. As they sit for drinks, David immediately notices Nina's nervousness, and when he spills some whiskey on his shirt, Nina tries to help, but he storms off to change. After resetting the game board, David returns and notices her interest in the game. They play, and as they bond, Nina learns that David views intimacy as a distraction from his pursuit of power, not something he seeks with escorts. The night goes smoothly, and the next morning, Nina learns she made $50,000. She leaves a proud voicemail for Victoria, but her excitement fades when two FBI agents arrive, questioning her connection to David. They reveal that they need an informant within his circle to uncover details about his plans to sell Links Incorporated, suspecting criminal activities. Although Nina insists she won't be helpful, the agents suggest that David has already trusted her. Later, David texts Nina to spend the week with him, offering to pay whatever price she names. Before Nina can respond, Victoria arrives, having cut her vacation short. Nina reveals the FBI visit, and Victoria fears it's related to her stealing money from clients. Nina clarifies that it's about David. When she mentions his offer to spend the week with her, Victoria proposes taking over the job to avoid complications. Nina pushes back, asserting that David is drawn to her personality, something her twin can't replicate. Victoria reluctantly agrees to let Nina keep the job, but insists on helping her prepare for what's ahead. Victoria trains Nina on how to navigate emergency exits and practice self-defense techniques, preparing her in case of trouble. She also provides Nina with an earpiece to coach her in real time during her assignments. At the coffee shop, Nina updates FBI agent Peterson about her upcoming meeting with David. Later, Curtis arrives and invites her to his birthday party, also sharing that he followed her advice and emailed his boss about his promotion, which excites the barista. That evening, David kills his bodyguard in a fit of rage, accusing him of betrayal. As the twins prepare for the date, Victoria ensures that Nina's earpiece is working. When Nina arrives at the hotel, David surprises her with designer clothes and takes her to an exclusive restaurant he's rented for just the two of them. As they dine, Nina casually asks about the bodyguard from her first night with David, and David admits he fired him due to trust issues. Influenced by Victoria, Nina then shifts the conversation to David's business. He reveals plans to restructure the company by selling shares, discussing how he went from a struggling analyst to a business mogul, and mentions using illicit substances in his early years before striking a deal with his suppliers that funded his empire. David takes Nina to a photography setup where he begins taking pictures of her. He notices her infinity tattoo and asks about its meaning. Nina explains it symbolizes new beginnings after dropping out of law school. Growing more comfortable, she shifts to more seductive poses and invites David for an intimate moment. However, the moment is interrupted when the camera shutter jams. While developing the film, David gets a message about his ex-CFO's smear campaign against him, which enrages him. He leaves to handle the issue, accidentally locking Nina inside the room. Fortunately, his bodyguard lets her out and takes her home. The next day, Nina reassures Victoria that David didn't harm her, but Victoria warns her to be cautious, mentioning a former client described David as dangerous. Victoria then invites Nina to her bridal shower. Later, Polly informs Nana that she missed Curtis's birthday party, and she heads to his house for an intimate afternoon. Afterward, Nina feels dejected and gets up to leave. Curtis tries to discuss their relationship status, but Nina brushes it off, assuring him that everything is fine. The next day, Nina meets David for another date, but she soon realizes he's expecting someone else. David explains that he's meeting a mid-level employee, Curtis, who emailed him directly. Curtis quickly introduces himself professionally, unaware of his connection to Nina. David asks Curtis to share his qualifications, and when David becomes handsy with Nina, Curtis briefly gets distracted but regains focus, delivering an impressive pitch. David decides to promote him. Later, Nina rushes to her parents' house for Victoria's bridal shower, but arrives too late. Penelope explains that traffic was delayed by a body found in the river, and when Nina sees a photo of the deceased, she's shocked to learn it's the bodyguard from her first night with David. That evening, Nina meets with the FBI agents again, now more convinced that David is involved in criminal activities. Peterson assigns her a new mission: to obtain a copy of David's speech for an upcoming Lionel Gaia event, as they suspect he will announce major restructuring plans. The next day, Nina visits Curtis to clear the air, assuring him there's nothing romantic between her and David, and that her work as an escort involves no intimacy. Curtis remains unconvinced, so Nina admits her feelings for him. Curtis then confesses he's always wanted to ask her to be his girlfriend but lacked the courage. Nina encourages him to ask now, and he hesitates, worried about David's reaction. Nina promises that David will never find out and that she plans to cut ties with him soon. At dinner, the family discusses wedding plans while Nina remains disengaged. Ryan tries to involve her, but Nina stirs things up by mentioning that Victoria helped her land a new job as a consultant. This makes Victoria uncomfortable, worried that Nina will reveal her secret. Nina also casually mentions having a boyfriend who works at Lionel, which alarms Victoria, who assumes she's referring to David. Victoria quickly pulls Nina aside to the kitchen, scolding her for falling for a client. Nina clarifies that she wasn't referring to David, but to Curtis, another Lionel employee. Victoria grows even more concerned, warning Nina about the potential complications this could cause. Nina, frustrated with Victoria's constant interference, storms out, retorting that she can handle the situation. Upon returning to David's suite, Nina is surprised to find Curtis in the middle of writing the businessman's speech. She attempts to leave but is urged to stay by David. Curtis soon asks for time alone to work, and David reluctantly agrees, offering Curtis pointers as he escorts him out. Seizing the moment, Nina hurriedly copies the speech onto a flash drive from David's laptop while the two men converse. After Curtis leaves, David confronts Nina, sensing the tension between her and Curtis. Suddenly, he grabs her neck, but reveals he's joking when he hands her a backgammon-inspired necklace. At Ryan and Victoria's apartment, Ryan discovers Victoria's notebook, which contains a detailed record of her clients and earnings, exposing her secret life. Victoria tearfully apologizes, but Ryan, unable to forgive her, breaks up with her. On her way to Curtis' apartment, Nina meets with the agents and hands over the flash drive containing David's speech. While satisfied with her progress, they inform her the job isn't over. When Nina protests their escalating demands, they threaten her with criminal charges unless she complies. They then order her to keep David confined to his hotel room until they review the speech. To assist, they hand her a pair of handcuffs, urging her to get creative. At Curtis's place, Nina is greeted coldly, as Curtis is still fixated on David's speech. He urges her to leave David now, but before she can respond, David calls, assuming she's already fallen for him. Curtis suggests it's probably best they part ways. Nina returns home to find Victoria, who chastises her for leaving the door unlocked. Still reeling from her recent interaction with Curtis, Nina snaps, blaming Victoria for the mess. Victoria reminds her of their shared past and reveals she just broke up with Ryan. Unmoved, Nina suggests they resume keeping their distance, firmly stating she doesn't need Victoria's help. Later, Victoria meets with John, asking for his assistance. Curious about David, she probes John about the businessman's ruthless nature. To her shock, John reveals David isn't under investigation. Instead, the authorities are after Peterson, a substance kingpin who was once an investor in Leo before its rise. Despite David not being under investigation, John reveals he's been building his own case against him and hands Victoria a folder with detailed evidence. Just before the gala, Nina arrives at David's suite to find him furious about a rat in his inner circle. Suddenly, her phone rings and Victoria desperately trying to reach her. To avoid suspicion, Nina dismisses the call. Following the agent's orders, she begins executing her plan, stripping down to her underwear in an attempt to seduce David. However, David manages to push past the temptation, refocusing on his speech. Desperate, Nina pulls out the handcuffs, hoping to entice him further. To her surprise, David takes control, cuffing her to the bed and promising they'll celebrate after his speech. Just then, Peterson and Bruno barge in. When David questions how they found him, they reveal Nina as the snitch, leaving her stunned. Peterson, it turns out, is not an FBI agent but the substance kingpin, also an early investor in Leo. From the leaked copy of David's speech, Peterson learns of the planned sale and David's resignation. Now he demands half of Lyle's ownership before any sale occurs and orders David to revise his speech, stay on as CEO, and delay the sale. He then instructs Bruno to accompany David to the gala to ensure compliance. Turning to Nina, Peterson points a gun at her, declaring her useless. However, before he can shoot, David lunges at him, triggering a struggle where David ends up shooting Peterson. Bruno then attacks David while Nina frantically tries to free herself from the handcuffs. Once free, she grabs Peterson's gun, and as Bruno raises his arm for a fatal strike, fires, killing him and saving David's life. At the gala, Curtis is greeting guests when Victoria passes by. Mistaking her for Nina, he calls her out for ignoring him. Initially confused, Victoria quickly realizes that she's Nina's twin and urgently tells him that Nina's in danger, insisting they head to David's suite immediately. Though surprised to learn about Nina's twin, Curtis senses the urgency and agrees to go with her. Sometime later, David recovers from Bruno's attack. Upon seeing Bruno's lifeless body, he realizes Nina shot him. Nina nervously tries to explain that she thought the two were FBI agents. To her surprise, David commends her for saving his life. He then orders her closer, removing his belt. As she cautiously approaches, he slips it around her neck as though preparing for intimacy. Suddenly, he begins choking her, enraged that she's been lying to him all this time. As Nina tries to fight back, David notices she doesn't have the infinity tattoo. When he demands to know her true identity, she defiantly declares that she's not who he thinks she is. Just then, the real Nina bursts in, knocking David out with a backgammon board. It turns out the twins had switched places while David was knocked out from Bruno's attack. Victoria had posed as Nina to plant incriminating documents against David, while Nina and Curtis contacted the police, strategically placing the documents next to the unconscious David. The twins hurry outside to join Curtis and speed away, ensuring they're long gone before the authorities arrive. Meanwhile, Victoria and Ryan eventually rekindle their relationship and marry a month later in an intimate ceremony, with Nina serving as the maid of honor. Nina has also become the owner of the coffee shop where she once worked. After a heartfelt moment with Curtis, Nina shares a playful, light-hearted exchange with Victoria, grateful that the chaos they endured ultimately brought them closer together. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.